sometimes you do have to experience that pain a little bit of trying to figure out it on your own before you realize I could really use some help with this. And I will just say through your accelerator program, we went in to learn how to be a podcast guest, but we came out with tons of clarity and just a better understanding of really what are we trying to even do? What is our message once we get on those podcasts?
Welcome back to Seven Figure Leap. I am really excited today. I am talking to two people I really admire, an amazing couple that does business together, and we're going to talk about how they help other couples do business together. And I think the most fun fact about them is it's the only client and it's the only podcast guest I've ever met in a post office. So I'm sure that'll be part of their story and how our paths intersected as we unpack the podcast. But Larry and Sue Pruett from sidebysidebusiness.com are my special guests. So Larry, Sue, I'm going to let you guys sort of take it away here and give us a little context, a little bit of your backstory.
Thanks so much, Dustin. We are really excited to be here today. And really, when people ask us to share our story and how we got started, we really have to go all the way back to when we were engaged.
Love it.
And because our heart is marriage, and we want to see people thrive in their marriage as well as their business. And so when we were engaged, we had several people who were very excited for us, but we also heard a good amount of, well, just wait until you're married. The message was, you'll be miserable then,
Yes.
And we started that just didn't sit well with us. And we heard it early in our marriage, wait till you've been married for a year, wait till you've had kids, whatever. People eventually gave up. I don't know, somewhere around the 4-year mark when we were still happy. And we just got this very strong desire to see people be happy and thriving in their marriage. And we felt like God had really just laid it on our hearts to be a good example of what a godly marriage looks like. And so that is something that we have always strived for. But then we have quite a path to get there. We started out kind of your typical Larry working a day job, me being at home with the kids. And
we've been married for 35 years now, so definitely everybody's given up on any sort of encouragement there by now. But yeah, I was just working a regular day job. We've got 5 children. And really when we had the 4th child at this point, I had the luxury of having a full-time job that was about 32 hours a week.
Wow.
I don't think that exists anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. That's very part-time.
Yeah, very part-time. And it didn't exist for me for very long. But during that small little season, I was like, I think maybe I should do something else to bring in some extra income. Sue was very busy with the kids and homeschooling and such. And so it wasn't like she was in a position to go out and pick up some extra income. So the 21 years ago, I sold the first thing on eBay. All right. And we're still eBay sellers. But that kind of gave us the bug a little bit for entrepreneurship.
It gave
me the bug.
That's good. I like that. Anyone that's not seen the video, the finger came out and she was like, it was you. Yeah.
You should be clear. The pointer finger came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I had a job where I could come home for lunch, and at lunchtime I would run downstairs to the little office and check to see if anything had sold. And if it did, I boxed it up and I ran it by the post office on the way back to work. So it was a crazy side hustle time for sure. And then, there's a lot to this part, but then around 2012, we just decided, look, it's time for us to go full-time with the business, or at least to give it a try. We were going to give it a 6-month trial. And then here we are. It was 2013 whenever we actually took that plunge, because I gave a 6 months notice at my job. And so now we're 12 plus years of being full-time. Primarily has been e-commerce. And now we're making the switch to marriage and business coaching.
And fast forward to 2020, I'm walking into the Jerseyville post office.
That's right. Here we go.
For eBay. And I look over and I see this guy standing there with a box of boxes that are all the same. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be a seller. He's got to be shipping out packages. So I struck up a conversation with you, Dustin. I was just like, and because we looked at helping other brands and things. And I thought, let's strike up a conversation and see. And that began our connection to each other. And then eventually we got on your email list for your marriage ministry that you were doing, and then you and Larry connected.
So yeah, I want to speak to that
crazy.
also, because that's kind of the double connection of the fact that you had the marriage related business, and that was a passion of ours. And so I think it was early in 2024 that I was like, we haven't talked to Dustin. I think we had a phone call or something along the way. And so I was following up on both the possible brand representation online, and as well as maybe some sort of a connection with the marriage business. And I reached out to you via email, and you don't know this part because you never responded to that email. And I think I had an old email address or something.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, I'm on the marriage business email. And so I went ahead and just replied to one of your just kind of routine emails. And I didn't really even think about which email I was replying to, but we had that kind of conversation going back and forth. And the subject line on that email was, "Are you okay?" So I don't know what the purpose of that email was, why you had that subject line, but all of ours say regarding, "Are you okay?" Back and forth.
That's hilarious. Oh man. I feel like I got some gaps I got to fill in for the audience. So,
absolutely.
And then we'll zoom into sort of like present day and the transition that you've been through lately with your businesses and this awesome new business that you've launched recently with the coaching on business and marriage. First of all, if anyone doesn't know this, so my first online business was Engaged Marriage, and that is what pulled me. It was also a side hustle, but that's what pulled me from marriage ministry with my wife online. So I learned digital marketing, created a website, wrote a book. And also I had a chapter there for about a year or two, year and a half with my wife, where we tried to work together. And then we realized that she is not an entrepreneur and I am, and she should probably stick with special education and I'll stick with entrepreneurship. And so a lot of stuff in there kind of related to the work that you do now. And I don't know if I've ever told you guys this, right in the transition from doing that to leaving engineering in 2017, there was a period where I was buying and reselling golf clubs, and I was like an eBay power seller, and all this. Like eBay was a very much another side hustle. And I was like, I'd buy local golf clubs, repackage, polish them up, take good photos, write good descriptions, resell them on eBay, and it helped us get out of debt, and it kind of freed me up to be able to pursue entrepreneurship full time. And in 2017, I did a 6-month trial for my engineering job, and so you guys were 5 years, I think, ahead of me in that. But I very similar path in a lot of ways, and then. In 2020, I was, in the age of COVID, I was working by myself in the warehouse for Fire Creek Snacks, which was another brand that emerged, out of my entrepreneurial journey. That's ironically, 2020, it was in the summer, I'm sure, because that's when I would come up there and work in the warehouse. That was probably right around the time I got on my first podcast, which led me to podcast guesting, which is now what I do and how, you guys ended up becoming clients in this stage of our lives. So a lot of little funny nuanced things. And yeah, so probably there was an abandoned cart sequence or an abandoned re-engagement sequence for Engaged Marriage, where if you hadn't clicked or opened something for a while, you get this message that's like, "Are you okay?" Because it gets you to want to respond.
Yeah.
And you responded. And of course, then one thing led to another. And I guess I'll turn it back to you on this part. But ultimately, we ended up working together, and you guys, not on Fire Creek Snacks, because I ended up exiting that partnership, and I was kind of in a stage, probably whenever we met, but especially 2 years after that, when I was like kind of checked out because that wasn't really my focus once this business took off. But you came over into my world with the Podcast Profits Accelerator, and it's been part of this whole transition that you've been in this year. So anyway, I'll turn it back to you, but that kind of fills in all these. It's really interesting to me, and I hope the audience finds it instructive, like just the power of relationships and putting yourself out there and being open-handed as far as like responding to people and serving people and having conversations, because you literally never know where it's going to go. So here we are on a podcast in 2025 talking about it.
Yeah. One of the things about that was when we met in the post office, I had a couple of moments of nerves, like, I don't know, should I say anything? Should I? And not only just because who knows what's going to happen if this is a potential business partnership, but it's the year of us being told, don't talk to people, don't be too close, don't do that,
It's summer 2020, yeah.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of that that was there, but just that, taking that leap of speaking up and just saying something and just striking up a conversation, just kind of letting it go where it goes was super valuable for me. I was actually kind of practicing a little bit of that trying to connect with people that I don't necessarily know. And so that was kind of fun. I was grateful that you were nice. You were somebody nice to approach. So that was good.
Well, and as I understand it, that was fairly infrequent for you to do that. It was very unusual for Sue to be in that particular post office because we have a closer post office that we go to 95% of the time. So there are a lot of God moments there in that. And I just think it's also really important because on our email list right now, I'll get frustrated sometimes that people just don't respond like I think they should,
Yes.
Not enough open rate, like I've got important things to say or whatever. And so sometimes just a simple follow-up, like, are you okay? May be the catalyst to something and maybe in a way that you have no idea how that's going to turn into. But we feel so fortunate to have gone through the accelerator program. We went through it in July of 2024. So that's been less than a year now that we've been through it. And honestly, right now, we're really kind of feeling our momentum with it.
Yeah.
One of the big changes for us is that we've sold off part of our business now, and we have freed up a lot of stress from our lives. We freed up a lot of time, and now we're able to focus in on this now. And so we have something like 6 or 7 interviews that are scheduled after this one in the coming weeks. And it's all based upon what we learned through your accelerator program. And so we're excited about seeing results even now, months after we went through the program.
I love that. Yeah, I think, because like when we got into this conversation, it was like you had obviously done lots of work with couples. Like you've done lots of work with couples in the e-com business. So business coaching for couples was something you're doing, but is very pointed at a specific type of business model and under the umbrella of some other stuff. So it seemed like, as I recall, this is, going back a little ways, but it's like you had a calling to do something different and you couldn't just like shut it down overnight because it was your income. Right. And being in that transition with you was, I felt the stress with you. It's like, wow, this like we really want to do this new thing, but we still have this old thing, and making the transition's hard. And I think anyone that's one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you guys here to talk about it. It's like you're not on the other side of the transition fully. Like you just sold part of your business like a month ago, but I felt like this is a really rich time to kind of dig in because you can still remember what it felt like, a year ago, and you're not quite complete, but you're getting there as far as like this transition. And I think it's really instructive and useful for people to realize entrepreneurship's really hard. And while we glamorize people's after and like, look what they're doing and like, wow, overnight success and all that stuff. Even like my overnight success started in 2009 when I started Engaged Marriage, and that's how we, met. But then I got on my first podcast in 2020 and now it's 2025 and this is my full-time thing. A lot of stuff happens over that long a period. So I guess I'd love to maybe dig in a little bit, maybe, just prior to starting the accelerator last July and the decisions you were making, why you felt called to make this transition and some of the choices you made to empower that. We don't have to, this isn't all about like the accelerator program, but there's a certain mindset, a certain abundance mindset that's required to kind of bet on yourself and go all in and invest in a program when you're not even quite sure what you're going to point it at yet. And so I'd love to kind of turn it back to you guys, let you talk about the last year and what that's been like for you.
Yeah. And really, I think it's helpful for us to go back about 10 years.
Okay.
We had an opportunity at our church to teach a Sunday school class on the topic of marriage. And unfortunately, at our small little country church, we had a couple of couples who went through divorce. And so our leadership was saying, we need to address this. We need to do something to strengthen marriages. And I went to our pastor and said, Sue and I are on board to support you in any way you want. And he said, okay, I want you two to teach a Sunday school class. And I said, no, we are here to support you behind the scenes. And, but, as we got to talk about it, we got really excited about it and we got really positive feedback, including a couple who said to us, we think that you were very instrumental in saving our marriage.
Wow.
And that's a very humbling thing. It's a very enriching thing. And so out of that, we had a gentleman who came up to us after the class was over, because it was about 4 months long. And he said, "Okay, what's next? Are you going to go on the road with this?" And we're like, "We're just happy we survived the last 4 months here." But it did start our thinking process on this. And so our business now is called Side by Side Business, which we've just recently rebranded to that. We start off with a different name. And whenever I went back to look, and like, oh, I should get this domain name, I'm like, oh, we have this domain name and we've been paying for it for 10 years.
I love that. You said that before I started recording. I'm like, we got to make sure we talk about that. Because how many of us have had the eureka moment and we get busy or we get distracted. And then it's like, a year later or 10 years later, you're like, man, I got this great idea. And it's like, oh, I already own this. Like, I already had this idea. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's fun to see how the Lord just weaves all the threads together in such a unique way. And it's been a lot of fun to realize that, yes, he's been pointing us towards this for the last 35 plus years. And he has really prepared us to move into a place where we can really, I think we're being used by God. It's really not all us by any means, but we can really bless people's marriages, people's relationships, and help them to thrive in that personal life, which, you've probably heard this before, but you get to the end of your life, you're not going to be upset that you didn't spend more time at the office or that you didn't spend more time working the business and earning more money. You might have regrets around, I should have spent more time with my family. I should have I should have worked harder at my relationships or what have you. And to have people say to us that we've been used in a way that has redeemed their relationship is very humbling to us. And that's the thing that I go, wow, we are really doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And we're just thankful that the Lord's allowing that to happen now in a more full-time basis.
And so we've kind of tied together these two big passions of ours. We've talked a lot about marriage, but we also love entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Yep.
Entrepreneurs are a unique personality and lifestyle. And like you said, just having the guts to take leaps and to do different things. I never thought that I was an entrepreneur. And matter of fact, whenever I was younger in my 20s, I would take those career assessment tests and such. And normally, like the leader of that event or whatever, just say just don't ever try to be an entrepreneur. Okay,
whatever you do, don't start your own business.
Yeah.
And so somehow along the way, though, I've just changed, and a lot of that is because of Sue. She's actually more of a risk taker than I am. And her encouragement on these type of things has really been impactful for me to say, like, okay, we're going to try this, and we may go down in a blaze of glory, but we're going to enjoy the ride. And so as we've raised our children. Our youngest is 19 now. He has informed us that he's planning on moving out later this year, so we'll see. We may be empty nested.
Nice.
So things have just changed in our life quite a bit, and the e-com business was very conducive to, we all worked together as a family. We did things together. I was able to go on sourcing trips where I would take one of the kids with me, and I have 12 hours, just the two of us, things like that.
That's cool.
As the kids got older and moved out, and I'm going on these sourcing trips by myself, they weren't nearly as much fun.
Yeah.
And not nearly as impactful. And matter of fact, kind of the opposite. They were kind of depressing. And I kind of struggled with some things along the way, and just realized we need to make this change. So our family situation changed, our mission changed a little bit. And so now this new opportunity is what we feel like the Lord's.
Awesome. So we're going to talk in a little bit kind of as we get closer towards the closing part of the show about mission. And you're going to give us some really good, tangible ways to define your mission and set boundaries and say no to the things that maybe are pulling you away from the mission that you're on, whether you feel like that's God's mission for you, or, regardless of sort of the source of it. I feel like it's God's mission. And I feel like this whole call to stewardship is a big part of why I do what I do. And it's interesting for me, like hearing your story was like very reflective for me, because it's like, well, I got online because we're doing marriage ministry. And so I thought, man, we're going to be marriage people. And, that was a great chapter in our life. And we actually got approached by a church that we had spoke at, I don't know, pre-COVID. And like, I'm talking like yesterday, like this just happened. I got this message on Facebook. She's like, we want you to come back and we're doing this, marriage event. And I'm like, I don't really do that anymore. I'm like, but it got me thinking like we could. Now we ended up having a conflict of the weekend, but I've matured and my wife's matured and our season of life has changed and we've got, 2 teens and a 20-year-old also. And it's like, I could do that, but like, I legitimately just don't feel like I'm called to do that right now. Like, I feel like I'm called to serve entrepreneurs, and I kind of talk about it like guiding the guides or leading the leaders, like empowering people like you who have their own unique and helping you spread that, evangelize that, and go out and make that big impact. And it was very comforting to kind of like just feel at peace with that and be like, no, I should say no to this. In the past, I'd be like, I can't say no. They asked me, and it's kind of an ego thing. So thank you for kind of giving me the space to reflect on that. So I'd love to maybe we zoom in a little bit to the last few months. It's a pretty big event. You mentioned it, but I'd love to hear a little more tangibly about so you exited part of your e-com business, which has been like this steady thing for full-time for 12 years and some part of your life for 21. And now you've rebranded, you've got the coaching business. I know you've had some coaching clients. I know you've got, kind of a new program you're looking to launch. So yeah, just maybe give us a little flavor for a snapshot of your business right now and how it feels and what you're looking forward to.
Sure, absolutely. We have, as you said, we did the e-commerce, and in the course of doing that, we also did a lot of coaching of people on that. And many of the people that we coached were couples.
Yeah.
And so we began to get that insight. So as we have, made that determination that, okay, we want to move into this coaching for marriage and business, we, as you said, we sold off one of our assets. We've kind of used that to kind of be the launching point for the current business that we're working on. And we are doing a group coaching experience and right now working on filling our first group. And so
Nice.
It's still very new to do this and only this, or primarily this. Yeah. And we're kind of in that first crank of the flywheel that you like to talk about, and finding people who need and want what we have to offer.
Yeah, and of course, that first crank is the hardest crank, right?
Yeah.
So,
absolutely,
just being real on it, and so, but it's been a lot of fun, and having the information that you have taught us, it has given us the direction that we want to go in building up our audience, and we've been kind of steadily doing that. One of the main reasons why we decided to go with the group coaching experience, though, is because we just see that power of community. Yeah. In your circle community, it's just so powerful to be part of that group and the encouragement that you get. And again, just people who understand who you are and what you're doing. And one of the stories I love to tell is there's a guy that I know, a little bit of an older gentleman, but I've known him for about 25 years or more. And just recently, there was a time where he was introducing me to someone, and he said, "Hey, this is so-and-so, and he works at this factory and he's got this job." And he said, "So-and-so, this is Larry. And what is it that you do again?" And I was just like, "We've talked about this." Somehow he just didn't get me. He didn't understand it. And in some ways, I don't expect somebody who's worked just a 9 to 5, nothing wrong with working a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
It's just a different world. And so that's why, as we kind of marry, if I can use that word, the married couples with the entrepreneurs, and then we get into this group setting where we're wanting to build this community. We're wanting to build this this kind of system where everybody helps each other along the way. And we've got a framework that we've come up with, and a whole what we call the 224 pathway that will walk people down and such. So very excited about getting this going, and it feels like 2012, 2013 all over again for us, when we were getting our e-com like really up to where it could be a full-time income. And it's exciting and it's scary all at the same time.
Absolutely. Yes. I'd love to hear a little bit, and you could talk about your own clarity. I want to talk about kind of this gift of clarity. So like your own clarity as you've been on this journey, especially the last 12 months, but also you've worked with a ton of couples, right? And getting them united or getting them committed to certain products or certain, niches or whatever, there's always this process of gaining clarity. And I've seen you guys gain a ton of clarity. And so I can give my own observations, but I'd love to hear from you. Like, what's it been like to go through a process of like getting clarity, and then any coaching experience or anything you have around that? Like, do you think it's important? I guess that's a kind of a softball question, but like, how do you see the process of clarity and the way that you also serve your own clients who are couples trying to build a business together, which is a unique challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. And
I'll say,
yeah,
one aspect of it was at the beginning was, I'll use the word frustrating.
Yeah.
that you have to reach that point of tension, but you go ahead.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to experience that pain a little bit of trying to figure out it on your own before you realize I could really use some help with this. And I will just say, through your accelerator program, we went in to learn how to be a podcast guest, but we came out with tons of clarity and just a better understanding of really what are we trying to even do? What is our message once we get on those podcasts? And it is, it's an emotional experience to gain that clarity.
It is.
And it's a surprising thing to me, somebody who doesn't like to get emotional very often. And so just to realize that, number one, we've got something powerful to share with couples. We can make an impact on people's lives, and just to get that validation from other people, but then just to get that messaging down. And so we've got a great 10X promise now. We help married entrepreneurs build the business of their dreams side by side.
I love it.
And that took a lot of work.
Isn't that so funny? Like, everyone listening is like, that's really good. That's super simple. I guess they figured that out, right before the interview today. We've been working on it for a year, or whatever. So probably longer. You've owned the domain for 10 years. So that's really good, though. That's a very clear promise. I like that a lot.
And it's probably the fourth or fifth iteration of that.
Yeah.
And, we learned certain things, and we got feedback from people who are like, okay, that's not what we were going for.
Yeah.
And so, but that clarity is key. And that is what we have seen in our clients as well. And when we were teaching people how to source product and how to navigate customer service and all these little, detailed things, but then it would always kind of come up to this couple, like the spouse is not on board, and how do I handle this situation? And we're going two different directions. And it's like, okay, we kind of need to pause some of these detailed steps, and we need to get the bigger things under control first before, you pull each other apart by going different directions. You got to be really careful there.
Yeah, keeping priorities straight is so important. And, we've seen it. We've seen businesses harm marriages who weren't, they just weren't paying enough attention to everything that was really what they said was the most important, but that they kept getting pulled away from that. And us helping people to figure out how to know how to set the boundaries you need to set so that that doesn't happen to you. And I don't think anybody would go into business with their spouse thinking, gee, I hope this hurts our relationship. We don't think that. But it has the potential if you're not paying attention to what's most important. And that's one of the things that we can help kind of put up some warning signs and say, hey, this is what you need to pay attention to so that you do this well.
And just one example is just the roles within the business. Whenever you're married to your business partner, and even if maybe one person does 99% of the work and the other is just kind of supportive or just supplementary type things, or if you're 50-50 in it, it's going to look different depending upon that circumstance. But your roles in the business may look completely different than your roles in the house.
Yes.
And whenever your office is in the house, like ours is, that becomes really complicated. One of the things that did help us while we were heavier into e-commerce is that we had a warehouse that we were renting. And so it kind of made it a little bit simpler. Like, when we're here are the roles. When we're back home, we're different roles. But really just to go through those and to say, okay, who's going to handle which, kind of outline, here's the important categories of our business and who's going to be in charge of that. And when that person is in charge of it, they don't just have the responsibility, they also have the authority. And so that means that if Sue's got the authority in something, I just need to keep my nose out of it, which is tough sometimes. And vice versa, though. We, there's big decisions that we're both involved in, but then there's a lot of little decisions that within our sphere of influence, that we say, that's mine, that's yours. And then the other one respects that, and that really helps.
That's gold. That's really is. You started that by talking about getting your own clarity, and then transition really beautifully into something we're going to kind of close with over the next, we'll see how long it takes, 10 minutes or so, and letting you guys teach us about what you call a family mission statement. And that is what it is. And we want to talk about it in that way. But as you were talking, I'm like, yeah, this is everything you said is totally true, and probably intensely true for a couple who is in business together, because these roles and these blurred lines among home and work, and my parenting role and my spouse role and my business role and all this stuff, it's messy. And so I think clarity is king there, right? I was at a conference recently and they said clarity is a gift. And like that was kind of like the theme that people in their presentation, they kept saying clarity is a gift, or clarity is a blessing. And like it really is. Like I don't think it's a word we even focus on enough. But also, even if you're listening and you're an entrepreneur and you're married and they're not directly into business, you still need a family mission statement. They still need to know their role and your role respective to the business and the finances that tie into that. And like, I could totally relate to that. I mentioned we had our own kind of rough patch of trying to be in the business. We realized that wasn't the best use of our talents. But ever since then, the main sources of conflict, I would say, over the years have been, Dustin, you're working too much, or Dustin, you're traveling too much, or I feel isolated, with the kids. And I'm like, well, I'm doing this for freedom, and it's like, well, I don't know if that's what we want. And so we've definitely had those times. And one thing we've done really well, I'd say, over the past several years is get really clear on our my boundaries. Specifically, I'll point the finger back on myself, but clear boundaries, clear expectations, clear communication when things aren't feeling right. And then just a united front about what is the mission of the business, because whether she's working in it or not, ultimately it's her business too, because we're married, right? And so I think for anyone listening, and if you're not married, but you have some sort of business partner or team, you need this too. So this is a universal need and principle, but we'll talk about it in the lens of a married couple who's working together, because that's who you specialize in helping. But yeah, I think this idea of clarity, boundaries, saying no to the wrong things, and being fully committed to the right things. Like, I'm very excited about this. So I want to kind of turn it over to you all and let you unpack this. I know you've kind of prepared sort of a mini lesson here on a family mission statement. And then from there, I'll answer or ask you some questions probably, and we'll move to close out. But I will kind of give the floor to you all.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is definitely more of a mini lesson, because this is something that we would probably go through, 90 minutes or something like that.
Sure.
If we were with a client. But it's really important for us to say no more frequently. And so what we want to do is to help the listeners and those who are watching to say no more frequently, more powerfully, and guilt-free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what that does is it frees you up to say yes with confidence. Yeah. And so what you can say yes to. One of the things that we run into as entrepreneurs is we all want to say yes to plenty of good things. There's a lot of good things that cross our path that we want to say yes to. And we should say yes to some of them, but not necessarily all of them. Another thing that we suffer with probably most entrepreneurs suffer with is shiny object syndrome. Probably most of us have a notepad next to the bed so that when we get a new idea, we can write it down real fast before it can get away.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully
one in the shower, whiteboard in the shower. Yeah, you got to have that.
Yes. That's a little extreme. I don't have that. But although it might work on the shower stall, I'll have to try that. But anyway, So one of the things that we need to begin to recognize is that not every opportunity to say yes to a good thing is something that we should be saying yes.
And we hear that, I think, fairly often. And we hear that we need to set up boundaries. We've mentioned the word boundaries several times already during this time together. And so I think everybody would kind of nod their head and say, yes, we all need boundaries to have more balance in life. But normally that's where everybody says, okay, well, good luck, have a good day. And so what we have found is that something that really works well for this is a mission statement. And that can be a family mission statement. It could be, if someone is single, it could be just a purpose statement. It could be, there could be a business statement, but really the family mission statement informs the business statement. So we always encourage people to start with that family mission statement.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we start with the family mission statement is because we do primarily work with married entrepreneurs, and we know that Nobody's going to say the business is more important than my family. Everybody's going to say my family's more important. And so we're going to help you live that by helping you develop a mission statement that helps you live that way, the way that you want to live. So normally we would take, like we said, about 90 minutes or so to teach this, but we want to encourage you, if you're walking through this, take about an hour and walk through some questions, think through some things here, but we don't want you to overthink it. Like seriously, limit yourself to an hour so that it doesn't become this big, hairy deal.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the big deterrents that people do have is that it's like it sounds really boring. But you do have to fight through some things every once in a while on this because it's deep thinking and such. But yeah, don't overthink it. Just jump in and get something down because you're going to revise this as you go. We revise things on a regular basis with it. So we've got basically 5 steps. All right.
Okay.
So the first step is probably the one that will take the longest because you're going to answer some questions and it's going to get down to some deep things that will help out. So the first one is to think of a mentor, somebody that you really respect. This could be somebody who's really successful in business. This could be a multimillionaire, or it could be somebody who really doesn't have a whole lot of money, but you just really respect this individual. And so ask yourself this question: why do I admire that person? What is it about them? What kind of character qualities do they have that has caused me to really respect and admire this individual?
And then secondly, ask yourself, if I could be remembered for one thing, what would I want that to be? What's the thing that stands out the most to you? What's the most important? Is it making lots of money? Is it spending time with family? What's the thing that you would want to be remembered for? What's the thing that you kind of want to leave your mark on the world with?
And of course, whenever you're answering that one thing, it may bring up 3 or 4 things that are tied in first. That's fine. Okay, so then the third question to ask is, if I had $1 million in the bank and I could do anything that I wanted to do professionally, personally, in life, what would I do? Would I travel a lot? Would I go see the world? Would I get an RV? Would I stay put go back to my hometown and set out roots there or whatever? Because this really gets to the heart of who you are and what you really are made to accomplish. I think so much of what we do in life, we're driven by the fact that we got to pay the bills, and that's just reality. But if that wasn't an issue, what would you do?
Yeah, and then step 2 will happen if your spouse isn't listening to this episode with you. Ask your spouse those same questions and write down their answers, and so that's going to take just a few minutes there as well.
So
That's
yeah,
great.
this is a great side tip for the guys. Guys, if you ask your wife these deep questions and pull out a notebook and start writing down the answers, she may pass out.
In a good way, she'll love it.
Way.
Oh, you value my answers that much.
Yes. So either way, this will be a great connection time for you. So then for step 3 now, you want to take, again, as a married couple, you want to make sure that you're on the same path. That's crucially important. So you want to start looking for some commonalities, both in your answers and your spouse's answers. If you're doing what we said to do and you're just kind of doing this quickly and you're not overthinking things, then you're not going to worry about repeating words as you're going through here. And so you'll probably see some repeated words, some common phrases, just some things that kind of like, okay, I'm seeing a pattern here, and maybe even recognizing some things that will surprise you in that process. So just circle those things or highlight them somehow and just recognize those commonalities in all of those answers you just had.
And of course, most important is the commonalities between your answers and your spouse's answers. If there's commonalities there, you've got it.
Yeah.
And so then step 4 is to sit down and just summarize the commonalities into 3 or 4 sentences that you're just basically laying out. You're saying, this is what's important to us. These are the boundaries that we want to set. And this begins to help you set up those boundaries so that you can live the life without regret that we all want to live, right? I don't think anybody wants to have any regrets. And then you lay out the mission that you want to accomplish as a couple and as a family.
So that just kind of is going to summarize who you are, where you're wanting to go, what you want to accomplish, what you want to be remembered for. And again, this doesn't have to be super flowery and fancy. You can throw this into ChatGPT later to kind of clean it up if you so desire. But step 5 is pretty simple. Then you just want to get this into a format where you can print it out. So put it into a Word document or a Google Doc or whatever, and save that and print that out so you can be referencing it, because this is a tool that you want to.
And if by chance you don't have a printer at home, write it. Just write it on paper. Just
Yeah.
get it on something on paper. You want a hard copy. And so what happens is that these statements, this family mission statement, it really becomes a filter for you, so that as opportunities come up, as people begin to ask you to participate in things or whatever it is, you filter those things through your family mission statement. If it fulfills that family mission, then great. If it doesn't, and so when you get a new opportunity, you need to use it in a certain way.
Right. So then you just ask yourself some questions, and this can be done for big things. Obviously, it can be done for little opportunities as well. But just like some of the questions that you would ask yourself is, does this opportunity, does it help me to become the person that I want to become? Or does it lead our family down the direction that we want our family to go? Is it going to help me to accomplish the things that are really important to me in life? And will it move me closer towards my dream, the dream career, the dream family situation, or whatever? So ask those questions. And
so when you get done asking yourself those questions, if all three of those answers are yes, then you can say yes confidently and no, this is moving us in the direction that we want to go. If any of those you have to say no to in answer to that question, then your answer needs to be not now. Maybe not ever, but definitely not now. And you just need to put that off, because it's moving you away from what you have said you want to do as a family and the mission that you want to achieve.
And I think you'll find that most of the time the answer is no or not now. Yeah. And we're just so programmed to say yes so much. So kind of what, in summary and finishing this up, then, is that the mission statement is going to give you that filter to take these possible opportunities and stop saying yes to good options and start saying no to those, and start saying yes to the right options and opportunities.
I love it. This is really powerful, and it is also simple, which I always say, like, the most powerful things are simple, and the most valuable things are the easy to do and easy not to do, right? It's one of those things you'd be like, that sounds pretty cool, I'll do it later, and then people don't do it. I think you really challenge yourself, especially if you're working with a spouse, or if you're in need of some unification with your spouse about your business, financial, career goals. Man, like, who couldn't benefit from this, And I think that's really, really powerful. To put you on the spot, and maybe you don't have it. And if the answer is we don't have it, that's fine. I'd love to hear your mission statement if you have it handy, or if you got some rough version of it in your head, just to kind of give people an example of how this might look as a finished product.
We just
actually
happen to have it.
Oh, good. I was like, we did not talk about this beforehand. So I'm going to put him on the spot.
He might ask us, so we better have that in front of us. Yeah. So it's basically got 4 statements that, and this is probably going to morph. But the first statement is to grow closer to God as individuals, and therefore closer to each other. You want to do the second one?
I'll do the second one, yeah. So then the second one is to grow in wisdom and use the gifts, talents, and abilities that God has given us to fill areas of service in the church and our community.
And then the third statement is lead children and others to Christ by being a good example of what a godly family looks like.
And the fourth statement is, this is an example of us altering this. We generally take a close look at it annually. We used to look at it quarterly, but this fourth one is based upon this change that we're making in our business and our life. So the fourth one is to serve married couples by encouraging and challenging them to have a one flesh marriage that demonstrates Christ's relationship with his church.
Wow, that's powerful. That fourth one gave me chills. That's that's awesome, because you can totally see then with that filter and with your value system, and that when an opportunity comes up to, someone's going to pay us a lot to go do a non-couples, or a thing that's like not necessarily anti-Christian, but like not in alignment with that statement of the mission that you're on. It's like, that's a no, even though it would be lucrative and we could do it and it's within our skill set. It's not on mission, right? And vice versa. Maybe there's something that is totally on mission and maybe it's not quite as lucrative. Your mission didn't say like to be millionaires. Your mission, you know what I mean? So because you have your mission and your value statements, like it is a very clear filter to me, like when certain opportunities come up, which they do come up, and we're entrepreneurs, and we already talked about shiny object syndrome, right? So that's really good. This is definitely something I'm going to do with my wife. It's been a while. We've had conversations around these things, but to actually document it and have something to reference in the moment, when you're in the heat of the moment and you're excited about something new, for either of us to be like, remember this?
Yeah.
We agreed to this. So,
Yes.
We try not to weaponize it.
Yeah, right.
But no, it is good for clarity and to kind of bring us down to earth. And I think I probably have more crazy ideas than you do.
Maybe.
I don't know. But Sue is very good at very kindly saying, let's talk about this.
I'm not sure that fits.
And I'll be like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, when would we fit that in, and what would that take us away from? And so, yes, she does it in a very kind way. But I think she probably uses the mission statement more effectively than what I do, to be honest. But it's something we even recommend to people to frame it and hang it up in your house. If you've got children, talk to your children about it and help them to understand. One of a common phrase that we had in our household was, like, if an opportunity came up, especially if it was something that we were like, okay, I think this is clearly not Christian, not what we want to be associated with, we would say something along the lines of, hey, we're Pruetts. We don't do that. We don't want to participate in that. And then fast forward to as our kids are adults now, and one of our kids set up a messenger chat group for our family, and they named it, and she named it "We Are Pruett." Okay, that really
gotta feel good. That's awesome. I mean, I know it maybe sounds a little trite, but that's definitely a legacy thing, right? For your kids to adopt that language. So, well, guys, you're a gift to me. I'm really grateful that we got this time to unpack your story and unpack some of the lessons and really have this practical application for getting a mission statement in place, because I think it's really, really important. So sidebysidebusiness.com is obviously home base, but yeah, this is always funny when someone's been in my program, but you're one clear call to action. But people, if they want to know more about you, they want to learn from you, maybe they want to get some coaching or have you talk to them about how to help them with their business because they're working together as a couple. What is the next best step for people that want to go deeper?
Sure. So what we'd like to do is give to your audience a gift. And if you visit sidebysidebusiness.com/connect, we'd like to give you a set of connection cards. And it's basically a way for you to connect with your spouse once a day, real quick, 2 minutes or less usually. And it's just questions that you can ask each other. Pull out one of those a day, make it a routine at dinner, before bed, in the morning, whenever it works for you. And some of them are just fun and lighthearted. Some of them get to a little bit deeper purpose around, you're being in business together. But we just want to give people that so that if you are starting to feel at all disconnected from your spouse, if you feel like it's a fight to get to where it's just the two of you connecting, this can be a tool that can be used that way for you. And just do that. There's, I think, 56 or so in there. So, you get almost 2 months worth of just connecting on a daily basis in a way that hopefully begins to foster a deeper connection.
That's beautiful. What a great gift. Well, sidebysidebusiness.com/connect. Go get your connection cards. Again, obviously the bullseye for this is if you're a couple who's in business together, but if you're part of a couplehood at all, I think connection cards are great, right? And you can use that as a great communication prompt. And really, really grateful for the gift and for your gift to the community and to the podcast audience here, Larry and Sue. Thank you so much for being here. Again, round of golf clap applause. This has been really useful, like legit, like super useful to me. Very grounding and really helpful to kind of reprioritize my spouse as part of this business journey that I'm on. Not to say that it's broken in some way, but there's so many great tools here in this mission statement, these communication tools, the connection cards, I think are just awesome. So sidebysidebusiness.com/connect. Make sure you guys go take advantage of that. And Larry and Sue, thanks for all that you do.
Thank you so much, Dustin. We really appreciated this.